Hello everyone, welcome to episode 16 of Off the Shelf, the half-termly library vlog. I'm Mr. Humphreys.
And I'm Miss Oliver. Okay, and I'm going to start today with my first book, which is a non-fiction book, Odyssey by Stephen Fry. I chose this book because he's such an intelligent and sharp-witted man, and I just love anything that he writes, basically. And this is one of his great loves, Greek mythology. So Odyssey is the fourth and final book in the series. We've got the other three books in the library, Mythos, Heroes and Troy. But this is a standalone book as well if you don't want to or haven't read the others, because in the introduction he gives a summary that links to the ages of each of the previous books. So it's all there for you. So the hero, for anybody that doesn't know the story, Odysseus, the Greek king of Ithaca, sets off on a turbulent voyage home to Ithaca, but under Poseidon's curse to wander the seas for 10 long years. So after leaving the city of Troy, he finds himself battling monsters, shipwrecks, storms, whirlpools, sirens and goddesses attempting him along the way.
Quite the journey, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. So Fry's retelling of Homer's epic, The Odyssey, is a gripping and relatable tale that has got Fry's lively tone and characteristic humour throughout. So definitely a story for all ages.
Great. And he's a national treasure.
He definitely is, yes.
Absolutely.
So now from Greek myth retellings to a retelling of a fairy tale. So Kalin Bayron, who is a TikTok sensation and New York Times best-selling author of Cinderella is Dead. We have that in the library, as well as This Poison Heart. Mm-hmm. So this story is a twist then on the well-known fairy tale classic Snow White. So it's a dark retelling, and the heroine on the front, Eve, she is a really strong, clever, courageous heroine. She's preparing to challenge the knight, who is terrorising her kingdom. But anyone who is desperate or foolish enough to seek him out may regret it, because he's a real monster, apparently, who turns wishes into curses. But she's trained all her life to defeat him. So you have to read it to find out, is she successful or not. So it's a YA fantasy that's got really strong characters in it, a plot with lots of twists and turns, and so if that's what you like, then this could be for you. She's also written for fans of Stephenie Meyer's Twilight series, a book called The Vanquishers, which we also have in the library, and that's about vampires and the undead and a 12-year-old protagonist. So if this isn't your cup of tea, then that may be.
I like how she's got a knight as the antagonist.
Yes.
It's a good feminist slant, because obviously in the original it's the wicked queen.
Yes.
So it's good.
Yeah,
I like
that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Good twists, yeah. And my final fiction book is The Storm and the Seahawk by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. This is the second in the Geomancer trilogy. The first, which is new into the library as well, was In the Shadow of the Snow...
Wolf.
Sorry, let me
Wolf
start
Queen.
again. In the Shadow of the Wolf Queen, yes. So it's basically about another bold, courageous heroine. This time she's called Isolde, and she has a seahawk, a loyal seahawk called Nara. And together they go on a quest to defeat the Snow Queen. Oh God, I'm going to keep calling her Snow Queen.
Yeah, I can see why. Of course, the infamous Snow Queen, the Wolf Queen. Yeah.
Yeah. So to basically her sister, Isolde's sister, is missing. She's in the Wolf Queen's clutches. Got it right that time. So she's trying to rescue her sister and to unlock some great magic within the earth. So, and she's trying to do this at whatever personal cost it is to her. So she sets out on her mission, on her quest. And there are lots of challenges, both human and physical. And she discovers not everybody can be trusted. So she meets friends and enemies along the way, old and new. But not all are what they seem. So this is a fantasy woven with mythology, and it will have enormous appeal for the authors of other books, Girl of Ink and Stars, Julia and the Shark, that was the other one, as well as authors like Catherine Rundell and Philip Pullman. So if you like those, then definitely recommend you try Kieran Millward Hargreave. Okay, another one for readers of all ages.
Absolutely, yeah. Universal appeal.
Yes.
She is a great author, and borrowing from Legends too. What you mentioned, Isolde, is that her name?
Yes,
Isolde.
Isolde.
Because that's another traditional myth, isn't it? The Tristan and Isolde. So I'm just wondering if there's
Yes, I hadn't thought of that.
So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's maybe there is a reference to that as well. But certainly borrowing from a lot of myths there.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Miss Oliver. All right, so what we got that's arrived in the library for older readers. So first up, I've got Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner. Now this is one of the Booker shortlisted books, and this is the one that's my pick. Not necessarily to win, but the one that caught my eye the most. So this is it's actually quite cool, I would say, which is perhaps not a word we would normally associate with the Booker shortlist necessarily. And what it does, it subverts and reinvents the spy genre. So it's got a female protagonist, which in itself is subversion, because I think a lot of us still think of perhaps James Bond or similar
definitely.
as like your spy protagonist. And another thing it does that sort of like undermines it is that she's not like a sort of for king and country type of spy. She's actually quite cynical and sharp-tongued. And the organisation she works for, it's not MI6 or similar. It's a kind of shady underworld organisation. So yeah, it does play with the things that we normally associate with the genre. But also, it's got this being the Booker. There's got to be more to it than that. It's got some thought-provoking themes. Perhaps the most important one for me, the one that resonated with me the most, is how it sort of explores how dominant ideologies at the time sort of spotlight their own take on things, their own narrative, and exclude all others.
Okay.
So it's very thoughtful in that sense. It's almost like the complete package. It's also very funny as well in places. So it's certainly my personal favourite of the Booker shortlist, and one that I recommend. So that book explores the tensions between the past and the present. This one, Great Britain by Torsten Bell, which is non-fiction, essentially addresses perhaps some of the gloom that is surrounding our economic and social situation of the present day, but it then looks to a hopeful, believe it or not, a hopeful future as well.
Fingers crossed.
Indeed, because, I think you look at the news at the moment and there's a general pervading sense that, wages are flatlining, taxes are going up and everything else is all a bit doom and gloom. But he doesn't just look at the root causes of this. He looks at, okay, what can we do about it? But he doesn't do it in a sort of looking at theory, pie in the sky thinking. He does it in a way that doesn't. Another thing is when people propose solutions, they tend to go a bit radical and a bit extreme. They go to one ideological extreme, if you like. But this guy, what he does, he grounds it in pragmatism. He goes, okay, this is the situation on the ground. This is what we can really do, and here's some solutions we can do. So. He puts it like this: the discussions resolve around economic practice, not economic theory. So practical. So we can only hope that enough people will listen with times being as they are. So so that's a good and timely read.
Yes, definitely.
Indeed. I think we can all agree on that one. And then my last choice, last but not least, we have an excellent debut novel that I have to talk about because the author, Hanako Footman, is a former pupil of Surbiton High School, and the book is entitled Mongrel. Now, most people who are watching this probably won't remember actually, because she did leave here about 10 years ago as a pupil, and she has gone on since to work quite successfully as an actress. If you look her up, you'll see some of the things that she's been in, some prestigious things, and she's now turned attention to being a novelist with this effort. And this story is a story of three interweaving narratives around three young women of Japanese heritage. But as the title suggests, they've also got ties elsewhere. So, for instance, there's one woman, who lives in Surrey. But of course, mongrel can be perhaps a derogatory term to someone who's got multiple heritage.
Yeah.
So it's very beautifully written, but it does have some hard-hitting themes. So it's not a light-hearted read, but at its heart, it's sort of like a passionate cry for being authentic to yourself. Authenticity, celebrating your heritage, and just having a sense of belonging, which can't always be easy when you've got multiple identities. But it does sort of show how you can do that, and it's sort of like a plea for that. So those of us who do remember Hanako from when she was people will be very proud, no doubt. So there we go. Okay, so we've got our first guest of the academic year up now. Mr. Sebastian is our guest this episode. Now, as you know, he's our new head of English. So if you're wondering what books the head of English likes to read, now's your chance to find out. Over to you, Mr. Sebastian.
So over the summer, I read Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead and also Dickens's David Copperfield. So these are two books where they are... David Copperfield is a Bildungsroman, a story of a boy born into a difficult family, stepfather comes in, sent off to boarding school, and he has a traditional kind of Dickens life of ups and downs and eventually an up at the end. But Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead is a retelling of that in the Appalachian region of America through the opioid crisis. And it was such a refreshing take on the whole thing. It really took everything Dickens did and really brought it right up to the present in a really, really I found it quite a fun read, but there's also some very, very dark bits in there as well. So Demon Copperhead, David Copperfield paired together. Really nice. Favourite book from my childhood has to be Tales from Ebony. This goes way, way back. This is a collection of famous fairy tales. So like your Hans Christian Andersen, your Brothers Grimm. But it was written by an actor in the late 1920s. And he called William Harcourt. Not famous at all. More famous as an actor, but even then mainly as a stage actor. His name's kind of forgotten. But this book was my dad's when he was a kid, and it was my sort of nursery sort of storybook when I was a kid. So it was read to me when I was about 6 years old, and then I was reading it myself when I was 9 or 10 years old. And it's just got all of your sort of favourite stories in there, and my favourite one's probably the valiant little tailor who is able to he squashes 7 flies with a piece of bread and butter and stitches himself a belt that says 7 at a blow, and then everyone is afraid of him because they think he can kill 7 men in one go. It's a ridiculous story, but the whole thing's absolutely packed with all these classic fairy tales that are really, really well told in the retelling. This is such a cheesy answer, but Shakespeare. I've not finished reading all 37. Life and work came along and interrupted me doing that. But I set myself the task about a year and a half ago to read all of Shakespeare's plays in 1 year. I got 30 read. Many of them I've read before, or I've studied, or I've taught. But there was a whole string of histories that I'd never tackled at all. So I knew my Henry V, knew my Richard III, but had never touched Henry IV or Henry VI, of which it's a 2-parter and a 3-parter. And I just absolutely loved it. I loved the way they all work together, the way they're written. Their role as like a historical document, because they're obviously talking very flatteringly about the king. And actually the plays got so popular and so political that in 1599 all playwrights were banned from writing English histories. So there's also something a little dicey about the fact that they exist. So Shakespeare's definitely, very cheesy answer, but definitely my number one author. I'd never be put off going to see a Shakespeare play or picking up and reading a Shakespeare play. Yes, Hurdy-Gurdy by Christopher Wilson. This was given to me by Miss Huntley 2 years ago, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was written during the pandemic, and it's set during the plague years in the late 1300s. And it's a story of someone who's raised by monks. So they grow up in a monastery, they grow up isolated. The plague happens and everyone except them dies. And they decide, maybe I should go out into the world. Like at the age of something like 17, he is the chief abbot of his monastery because he's the only person left alive. And he just decides, after having got the plague and recovered from it, or so he thinks, he goes out in the world to just enjoy everything he's been deprived of. And he realizes as he goes from town to town, village to village, that he's a super spreader and that he's just spreading the plague to more and more people. But it's a really fun read. It's like laugh out loud funny, and it completely tickled me because it was kind of very relevant to now because of the pandemic, and it was. But it also tickles me because it's. I really like Chaucer, and I like. The medieval history and literature, so it was a double whammy for me there. So that's Hurdy-Gurdy by Christopher Wilson. Three Desert Island Books are going to be harking back to earlier answers. The complete works of Shakespeare has to be in there. I mean, that really is kind of enough in its own right. And then Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, just because I find it just absolutely fascinating, and the fact it's written in Middle English will kill a lot of time. And the third one is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which I honestly think if I had to put just one prose novel in my desert island bindle, it would have to be that, just because it's so richly written. It's a fascinating insight into humanity and human consciousness, and it's also the birth of sci-fi at the same time, which is just again another favourite genre of mine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sebastian. Right, so next up we've got an all-new feature. We're going to do something different each episode for the next bit. And what we're going to do this episode is we're going to do a little story cube challenge. So what I've done, I've rolled 3 dice, and the image of what came up in those 3 dice is going to appear on your screen now. And I have randomly asked a few people to come up with a 1 or 2 sentence story based on those images. So let's see how everyone got on.
A sheep living in the meadows of Wiltshire got onto a plane and went into London. It dropped off at the front of Buckingham Palace and went up the turret and slept.
Once upon a time there was a sheep that went on a plane, and it went to a castle to meet its mum and dad, who were the prince and queen of Sheepland. The end.
Once upon a time there was a sheep that was trapped in a castle called Bob, and then it got on a plane and they got out of the castle and it went to France.
The sheep flew on a plane to Wales where he saw a castle because he'd heard the stereotype that everyone in Wales owned sheep and he was very lonely.
One time there was King Sheep that lived in a castle and took his private jet to another castle in Costa Rica.
Mum held on to my face, saying, "Little lamb, don't be scared." The plane was descending at a rapid pace. I saw a castle coming into close view.
Thank you, that looked like fun. And now on to the final bit, piece of trivia for you. So Victor Hugo apparently wrote the longest sentence printed in Les Miserables.
I'm not surprised because it's a very long book.
Yes.
Do you know where in the book it was? Or
No, I don't know.
Okay,
no,
well,
no.
there's only one way to find out, people.
Yeah,
pick
read
up
the
the
book,
pick up
look
the
for that
weighty tome
sentence.
and look for it. All right, thanks, Oliver. So thank you, everyone. So that's the end of our first episode. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Keep reading, and until next time, take care. Bye.
Bye.